a lot of times I find, and I mean, if you guys are going through your paradigm shift, this is what you're going through right now. Oh my goodness. Everything in the world is evil and Satan controls everything. Satan doesn't control everything. He controls a ton of things, okay? Let's be honest. Let's be brutally honest about it. He's got his hand in the pot. God's got a sovereign plan for this world, and Satan likes to think he's got a sovereign plan for this world, and he tries to make it happen. Personally, I think it's hilarious when he puts his plan together and it still doesn't work. Anyway, but
Is this a drama or a comedy, Dan? I don't...
it's kind of like a tragedy comedy, you know. But
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah. While Satan is having his way in the world right now, and God is allowing a lot of it, and I believe he continues to allow even more and more and more as we near the end, God is still having his work. And at some point, actually, I don't know when, but there is a guy who is leading in missions work right now, and he's got a real thumb beat or a heartbeat on what's going on in missions. And you're going like, we're talking about conspiracies and missions. Like, hey man, you know what? We use conspiracies to share the gospel, and there are some people who are called to go to another nation, learn another language, and live with these tribal people and share the gospel with them, just like Paul did. You know, we each have our calling. As Leonard Ulrich said to me, he said he's a watchman, whereas a guy like John MacArthur is a pastor. And they're called to do two different things, to do it two different ways. But they are both still called to share the gospel, and they do it in their individual ways that God has so gifted and equipped them to do. And that's so true. But the reason I want to have this guy on here is because I want to kind of like remind us all that while, you know, all this stuff is going on, God is still doing his work in the world too. And it's more than just in the conspiratorial using that to share the gospel. And that's huge. That's important. That's where Sam and my ministry is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm not down in that at all. I just want to kind of bring a rebalance, kind of remind everyone, you know, there are other people out there too. And even though they don't understand everything, they are genuinely called to do it.
Yeah, that's okay.
So anyway, I bring that up because in my life, I've really seen this to be true, where there's this fight between the spirit and the flesh within me. And I'm going through these times. During these times of controlling, I'm setting it aside. I'm setting the sexual sin aside, and I'm having real growth. When this guy started mentoring me, wow, I mean, I learned so much. There's a book called Changed into His Image by Jim Berg I read in high school. I've read it probably 6 or 7 times since then, and I will read it many more times in my life to come. They're just foundational principles to growing in your walk with Christ there, and the scripture that he brings forth. It's excellent. Anyway, so I'm going back and forth between this while John is developing me and growing me to be a Christian leader. I'm still harboring over here less and less secretly my sin, what's happened to me, etc., etc. And we actually reached a point where he became aware of what my cousin had done to me, and we started counseling. And it was actually at Word of Life, a group of guys helped me work through those things. One guy was my discipler at Word of Life. And actually, during my year at the Bible Institute, I came home spring break, and I went over to my grandparents' house. They lived next door. My cousin stayed with them often. That's where everything happened. And my dad's parents. And you have to understand too, my grandparents were very old. I mean, they barely got around even then, so it's not like they knew what was going on. It was really easy for him to do what he did. And I went over, and I was angry, and I was in tears, but I told him, I forgive you, and I let it go. And I hadn't let it all go at that point in time, but I made the decision I'm going to let this go. I'm going to forgive him. And it was hard, and it's still hard.
Can I just ask you, and I won't necessarily include this, but did you say there was a time when you said if you ever do that again to somebody, or wasn't there like a something where you talked to him or threatened him at one point?
Well, there were
I mean, you don't have to include it. I was just wondering because I thought that you had said something about
There was
that.
a time. Um, I did tell him then when I chose to forgive him that if I ever found out of him of ever doing anything that like that to anyone ever again, I would go to the cops and I would ruin him. And if my cousin is in jail now for it, and they had many other testimonies. Um, and I mean, he's away for 30 plus years now, recently sentenced. He will probably never see the light of day again outside of a prison. Um, Now, he is claiming that he's come to know Christ, and I praise God for that. And maybe um, here in another year or so, I will be able to go and visit him and see if that's true. And I pray and I do hope that it is true. Christ can change anyone, including my cousin, and it is absolutely
I
possible.
agree with that.
Absolutely, and I hope it's true, and I will rejoice with him. And if he ever does get out, I believe that if he really does know Christ and he's repentant, that we can have a relationship. I don't know to what extent. I mean, Christ can heal to any extent. Um, I can only answer for where I am right now.
Hmm.
Um, but no matter what, he will never be trusted with my children, or my nieces and nephews, or anyone's. And if he's repentant, he'll understand that, truly, and he would never put himself in that position again. I did also tell him that if he did it to ever did anything to my sisters, I would put a bullet in his head, um, and to um, step back a little bit more into my story during this time. I was an odd child. Too, while being a Christian, I knew how to appear to have a conscience, and a lot of this really manifested when I started learning to control and manipulate. When I was a little kid, I knew right and wrong. It was instinctive, but after a while, I think I kind of made myself cold to it. Death, blood, killing someone, the idea of it, apart from Christ, doesn't really bother me. Gore, not at all. I've actually kind of find it funny, and this is y'all probably going, wow, that's really disturbing, dude. What's wrong with you? Some people might call it psychotic or psychosis. Um, I, you can call it that. I mean, I've called it that. I think a better term is depravity in a life without Christ.
Yeah.
Sin will lead you there. Romans 1 tells us that when it's talking about sexual sin. These men have forsaken the natural use of women for each other. And then it goes into talking about, and for the use of animals and bestiality. The further you pursue a sinful desire, the longer it will lead you down until the point of death. And you can't manipulate very well if you have a conscience, so I probably really at that time really turned it off. So there's that part of me that even now that I'm relearning to be sensitive and to value life. I do value life. I'll share one thing that was really shocking, actually. My wife and I were down in North Carolina for a training for work this spring, and it was actually our anniversary week, so that was pretty cool. We got to get away without the baby for the first time, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, good
That's
times.
nice. That's real nice.
But on our way back, I surprised her, and we vacationed in Annapolis near DC, and I got us the same room, same hotel. It was kind of neat to go back. But that night we were watching an episode of a show called The Mentalist. I don't know if you all have ever watched it. It's kind of crime show. And in this episode, a couple of the main characters that looked like they were going to die. One guy I really liked, and I wanted the main character Jane to take that shotgun and blow that guy's head. I mean, literally, I was like saying it, and Elizabeth was like, "What's wrong with you?" And after the episode, I calmed down, and I was actually disturbed. I was disturbed that I wanted him to kill him, that I wanted to see his head blown off. And you may think like, well, yeah, obviously you should be. I mean, I understand you might get the vengeful part of it, but I wanted that guy to be blown to a million pieces. And it disturbed me that I desired that, and realizing, no matter what, that's still a human life. And that may seem like a normal thought to most people, but to me, that was like, wow. And I felt it. I didn't just think it. I felt it in my heart. Like, what was like, this has value. And I was blown away. And I prayed for like an hour that night, but I bawled and prayed and was just like, God, I need you. I was thankful that I felt it, but it really just like blew me away yet again. Like, wow, I really need his influence. I need his work so this happens in me. So, okay. Anyway, I graduate high school, met the woman who's going to be my future wife. We're friends, we're talking. I go to Bible school, think I'm going to be a pastor, so I come home. I'm a pastoral intern for 3 years. And this is where the juice begins to start, ladies and gentlemen, or the meat. One of the first things I watched when I got back from Bible school, my 1-year Bible degree, and by the way, I have not yet graduated my undergrad degree. I'm still pursuing it. I don't do student loans. I don't do debt, period. I've got enough student debt from my wife going to school. And this is before she really learned. I mean, if she could go back and do it, she wouldn't now. And I've got quite a few medical bills, but I don't do debt. So I haven't finished yet. I'm 24 and I don't have a college degree. I have spent 3 years as a pastoral intern, and my pastor and the president of the college have tried a couple times to just pass me through, but the state or the government won't let them. I actually have to take the courses. So during this time, one of the first things I watched when I got back was JFK by Ryan Coster.
Oliver Stone.
Oliver Stone.
Yeah.
There we go. And Costner's the director, right?
Costner is the actor.
Costner. There we go.
Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner. Sorry.
Yes.
And Oliver Stone is the director. And that started my little brain working. Because I manipulate.
What year was that? 2000.
I graduated 2008.
Oh, 2008?
Mm-hmm.
So this is.
Oh, no, that was high school. I'm sorry, 2009. I graduated from Bible Institute.
2009 is when you watched JFK.
And I never liked JFK. I thought he was a sleazy Democrat. And snake in the hole. And I thought he was one of the worst presidents ever. And I watched this film, and I go, oh, shoot. And my dad goes, it's interesting. I guess it could be true. It's just a film. And I'm looking at it going, is that true? Like, did Johnson really reverse every decision Kennedy made within, I think it was an hour of being sworn in? Is it true? I mean, first of all, how about the magic bullet? How does a bullet turn 16, 17 different ways in the human body? No way. Did you miss high school physics or what? Like, I'm sorry. They don't do that. An M16 bullet, when it hits you, and I think I don't remember if it has to be hollow point or the other, but when it hits you, it explodes and it shreds up like shrapnel in you.
Yeah.
But I know of no bullet, and it can't be replicated, and they've tried it hundreds of times, that hits you in the shoulder, turns, goes directly down, bumps around in your torso, goes into your hip, bounces off, and exits through your kneecap. I'm just saying, that was a little weird. And not physically possible. Secondly, Oswald, the shooter. They took the top, I think it was 50 snipers in the U.S. with the same rifle that Oswald supposedly shot. And they tried to get off 3 accurate rounds in the amount of time that Oswald did. I think Oswald got him off in like 7 or 9 seconds. I think the best recorded score was like 17 or 18. And you're going to want to fact check me. It's been a while since I've looked at this stuff. I could be wrong. We're talking the top rated snipers. Oswald was an OSS officer, okay? Naval Intelligence. I believe that was OSS. And he was on record and recorded as being a below average accurate shot. And yet, he managed to get off 3 perfect rounds with an extremely difficult rifle that the best snipers in the nation couldn't do. That's a little fishy. Also, when you consider that there people standing there heard shots coming from behind a fence and under a bridge, well, that's a little odd too. And when you consider that most of these people who would have testified to this were killed within, I believe, a 5-year period, except for a few prostitutes or a prostitute, I believe, and I think even she was eventually killed, if I remember correctly.